All right. I'm going to do a quick sound check. Good evening, everybody. Looks like we have about 11 attendees that have joined in, and hopefully all of your audio is working. I believe staff on our end here are logged in and are able to hear and communicate. So why don't we go ahead and get started just after 5:30 here. My name is Ken Hyatt, City Manager here for the City of Woodlands. Also on the call and participating in this meeting as well are Katie Warzel. She's our Principal Engineer, oversees our traffic division with the Engineering Department. Also Brent Meyer, City Engineer and Acting Community Development Director. And then we also have Sergeant Ruiz, who oversees our Traffic Enforcement Division in the Police Department. I'll do a quick introduction, and then Katie Warzel has put together some informational slides as well as some potential options for us to receive feedback from the neighborhood on relative to the West Street corridor. And hopefully you're on the right meeting, right? Tonight's focus is on the section of West Street south of El Dorado and at the city limits as you enter from County Road 99. And want to thank you all for joining tonight. Also want to thank you all for your patience as we've worked through this issue on this corridor, which is a unique corridor. We will absolutely acknowledge that this section of West Street is a one of a kind here in Woodland, where you enter into the community immediately into a residential neighborhood from a county roadway. Has some unique circumstances, and as a result, I think is subject to some excessive speeding as a result. And we've received significant comment and feedback from the residents that live on and adjacent to this street about the need to address the traffic safety issues here. And over the course of the last year, we've implemented some initial measures, knowing that they would not really address the problem in totality, but were fairly easy and simple things to do up front. And then we actually consulted with a outside third-party traffic engineer who specializes in traffic calming. And we asked them to take a look at this corridor and provide some suggestions on what would be the most effective measures to address this this unique stretch. So Katie's going to walk you through some of those later on this evening. And in addition, knowing that there's some immediate issues out there that need addressing, Sergeant Ruiz and the police department have been doing some targeted enforcement along the corridor. I'm sure you guys might have observed them out there since the beginning of this year, and do want to report that since January, over 55 citations now have been issued to violations along this corridor. Hopefully having some impact on the behavior of drivers on West Street here, but again, recognizing that's only as good as the enforcement that's out there and the consistency of it, and really through more active engineering measures and modifications to the roadway until those are implemented, will we see hopefully more consistent improvement on the traffic in the corridor. So most recently in prompting this meeting was our request of the City Council to give us direction to move forward with some traffic calming interventions on the street and engage the neighborhood with feedback on some of the solutions that the traffic engineer that we engaged has provided to us. And so at the October 20th council meeting, the council did provide that direction. And so we are now before you this evening, sort of initiating a more formal outreach process to get that feedback. So we look forward to hearing what you have to say about some of the suggestions, and do want to couch the alternatives that are going to be presented later this evening are in no way the only options, but we think are really some of the most effective ones. But We are not the residents on the street. We don't, see every, um, incident that happens out there, nor do we travel it as regularly as you do. And so we really do need your insight and feedback to make sure that the measures that we do ultimately implement will not only have the intended effect, but also will not have unintended consequences that I think only you guys can provide the feedback on. So with that, I will hand it over to Katie, and Katie will walk you through a little bit of the presentation, and then we'll engage in some dialogue at the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Ken. Good evening, everyone. Thank you to those of you who are able to be here tonight. By way of general housekeeping, I wanted to let everyone know that you'll be muted until our host unmutes you. If you do want to speak, please use, if you're on your smartphone or your computer, use the raise hand function. And if you're calling in, press *9 to raise your hand. So to provide a little bit of background on traffic calming and what traffic calming is in general, essentially traffic calming is the implementation of roadway modifications that change driver behavior to reduce speeds. There are three categories of traffic calming. There's intervention, which is essentially enforcement and education. Passive traffic calming, which changes your perception and awareness while you're driving down the street. It's generally speed, signage, and striping changes. And then active traffic calming, which are physical roadway modifications, which usually include medians, bulb outs, traffic circles, etc. It's important to note that stop signs and yield signs are not traffic calming measures. They're used to control the right-of-way at intersections, and often unwarranted or unjustified stop signs and yield signs can actually increase speeds and accident rates on a given corridor. Ken kind of went over some of the background for us already, but we did receive a petition. We did a study about a year ago and found that even though the posted speed is 30 miles an hour, the 85th percentile, which is the speed that 85% of people are driving at or below, is 38 miles an hour. We did see a differential in speeds. The southbound speeds were about 1.5 miles higher than northbound speeds. In either rate, when we did the warrant analysis, the passive traffic calming measures were met, but active were not. So when we started, we implemented a few the intervention methods, which started with the concentrated enforcement that we were just speaking about, and then we moved on to passive traffic calming, which are the 30-mile-an-hour signs and markings that went up last summer. Unfortunately, even with all of that, we haven't seen a significant change in speed, and so Council's given us direction to implement active traffic calming. The implementation process in general is a preliminary evaluation that happens at a staff level. That's where we engage the traffic engineer that Ken just mentioned. And we have a meeting, which is tonight, to obtain an understanding of your concerns and your experiences because we don't live out there. Following that, we will prepare a plan and review it internally and externally with those residents who are directly affected by any changes to parking or to the roadway. And then we'll distribute the plan for approval. And in order to move forward from that point, we would need either a 75% approval rate or less than 25% protest from those residents that are not on or have property facing West Street. During the preliminary evaluation, we were able to determine that because of the extent of utilities in West Street, it would preclude any sort of landscaping on the features. Now, this only affects the way that they look from a landscaping perspective and doesn't degrade their effectiveness. West Street is a primary emergency response route, so that needs to be taken into consideration. And given those things, the eligible measures to be used and most likely measures to be used on West Street would be medians, bulb outs, or traffic circle, or some combination of the three of those. The ineligible measures that we looked at would be speed humps and raised intersections and a roundabout. Speed humps and raised intersections are generally used on smaller, slower residential neighborhood roads because they deflect the traffic. Because they deflect vehicles vertically, and they can have a negative impact on emergency response and the potential side effect of errant vehicles where an unsuspecting driver hits a speed hump and loses control of their vehicle coming into or out of town. And roundabout would be a very effective measure to be used, but there are other just as effective measures that wouldn't require any right-of-way changes or property acquisition. So just to give you an idea of what we're looking at and what these different features are, there are a lot of different design types and design options for medians. These are just two examples that are local to us, where you can either have a cut through for the pedestrian access point, or you can have a median that is in advance of a crosswalk. Other medians, these are a little bit more extreme, where you see the roadway and the striping has been diverted around the median. This has a bigger visual impact on drivers as they're approaching the median, so it makes them think about what they're doing, physically go around the median, and it restricts them a little further. Bulb outs are another effective traffic calming measure, which physically narrow the roadway. In this scenario, it's a local residential street, and you can see where the corners have been bulbed out. Another option is to combine medians with bulb outs. This is actually the intersection of First and Court Street here in town, where the roadway's been narrowed by using the bulb outs in addition to the medians. This has a bigger visual impact and tends to slow traffic down. Another alternative is a traffic circle. This is actually a fairly simple example of a traffic circle, where you have a raised median in the center of the roadway with a striped island. These can be designed to have raised islands on approach to the circles. They can have striped islands. It's all very much dependent on tolerance for no parking zones, as well as the design of the area and the homes fronting and properties surrounding the intersections. A couple more examples of fairly simple traffic circles with signage and stamped island areas. So from a preliminary design perspective, looking at this corridor, our goals would be to lower the speeds throughout the entire corridor, especially on entrance to and exit from the city limits. The methods that we might use to achieve the goals are anticipated to be medians, bulb outs, traffic circles, or some combination of those. In consultation with our traffic engineer, it was determined that the location, when we're looking at different location options, that the location that would have the greatest impact on speed would be to install something near or at the intersection with Del Mar. The reason for this is that it would be the first thing you would encounter as you enter town, and that would keep it would change driver behavior immediately upon entering the city. And from a southbound perspective, a driver would be less likely to accelerate rapidly from El Dorado, where the stop sign is, knowing that they had to then slow down again at Del Mar, so that would entice people to stay closer to the speed limit on their southbound travel. Second to that, we looked at doing something simply at Miramonte, and while that would have a benefit to the corridor, the impact to residents and to travel speeds south of Miramonte would be a lot less significant than doing something at Del Mar. Based on that, we are kind of looking at probably the most effective method being some combination of the two locations, so that we can spread the impact out across the entire corridor. So again, as Ken said, none of these are final designs by any means. This is simply some sketching that we did on an aerial just to give an idea of what we might be looking at. This is an example of what corridor medians might look like, where the medians are focused at the intersection at Del Mar to encourage people to slow down on their entry and exit from town, as well as a set of medians between Hacienda and Miramonte to keep those speeds low throughout the entire corridor. Another alternative might be to install a traffic circle down at Del Mar, and similar to the previous slide, traffic calming medians between Hacienda and Miramonte. I just realized I didn't note very clearly that the blue that you see on the screen is either a raised median or a traffic circle, or could even be striped medians. And that the red is kind of an estimation of where no parking would need to be where parking would need to be restricted to allow that channelizing and that narrowing of the travel lane. The third option that I've prepared just for sake of conversation would have a traffic circle at Miramonte with a median island on the approach to the northbound approach to Del Mar, to try to calm traffic on the way into town, and then also to keep those speeds lower as you hit Miramonte. Again, all of these designs are simple, quick thoughts that we had with our staff and our design consultant, and they're really intended to start a conversation on what's tolerable for the neighborhood, whether or not these features would improve the situation, and what the residents are looking for in the solutions that we create. So at this point, I would like to open this up and hear what you are thinking and what your preferred alternatives for traffic calming might be. As a reminder, you're muted by default. If your hand's raised, our host will unmute you, and then you can speak. I do ask that if you're talking, if you wouldn't mind telling us your name and your address, and if you have property fronting on West Street, what your thoughts are on the parking restriction impacts.
Hello, first to speak is Johnny Hall.
Am I heard? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Good. I guess it's a good thing I'm first because I'm the first person on the street that catches all of this stuff. I'd like to comment on your proposals so far. So none of those address the traffic as it were in front of my house. I know I'm trying not to be the single guy out that has to take the hit for the rest of everybody, but I'm also, that's what I'm doing now. Anyway, I can't get out of my, wait, we've already discovered that there's a problem here with the traffic. I'm not going to go on that. How about, I'm suggesting as the speed comes into town that you work with the county to lower the speed limit out there. So that way they're not speeding, you know, going from 55 down to 30 right here, which is kind of a jerk move for the police department to enforce. It's kind of like a speed trap, if you ask me. I don't mind it, but how about slow the speed down just like as if you were going into Cape Hay or into Esparto, where it's 55, well, you slow the speed limit down to 45 before the city limits. What that would be up for discussion there. It's an idea, and then it's totally within the realm of putting the bulb outs like that. Because I can tell you, I live on this street and I've lived here for 44 years, and those bulb outs and roundabouts, they're gonna cause wrecks, period. There's gonna be people dying, and especially since the new walkway is right here. The pathway, I see people getting almost getting run over every day. A dog will run out in the street, splat. I have yet to have a pet grow up in this house that didn't get splattered on the street. And it's just a matter of time before somebody gets hit here. You know, I think there should be something for the pedestrian traffic, not just the vehicle traffic around here. No, that's all I have to say.
Great. Thanks, Johnny. Katie, if you wouldn't mind, talking a little bit about, what options we have for working with the county as it approaches to the city, the south, and some of the conversations we've already had with them around measures, and then maybe even add in a little bit about, our future plans for if and when we get the funding necessary to improve the current path on the south side of the community, and what improvements at that crossing we would likely need to do at that point.
Sure. So we can absolutely have more conversations with the county and with the county staff about the speed limit out in the transition area on approach to town. But by way of background information for those of you who are listening, the speed limits are set based on the 85th percentile of travel speeds. And this means that a study has to be done to determine how fast people are traveling, and based on that and the speed that 85% of people are traveling at or below is how speed limits are set. So the county can't just arbitrarily go out and change the speed limit, but we can talk in terms of transition speeding and additional speed zone signage with the county to try to address that on approach to anything that we do. Further than that, the funding that Ken was referencing is for the pathway that is along the south edge of town. We would like to obtain grant funding to improve that to something that would be more of a recreational facility, and in doing that, we would have to create and want to create some sort of positive crossing for the pedestrians and cyclists that would use that facility as they cross West Street to raise awareness of the crossing in general, as well as to calm traffic and create a positive connection point.
Thanks, Katie. Quick follow-up question. So if I understand, if we were to implement these traffic calming measures in some fashion, similar to what was outlined in your 3 slides, and we came back and did a traffic survey afterwards, and we saw the 85th percentile actually lower, could we use that as justification to the county to adjust their speed limit as it approaches?
It's absolutely a conversation we'd have with the county, yes.
Okay.
Next up to speak is Constance, and then after that is going to be Nick.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me? So this
Yes,
is
we can hear you well.
Constance's husband, Jochen Dittrich. We are on Delmar Street. So thank you for the options that you've shown. So based on the first examples of the medians that you had shown in your slideshow, I actually would have a hard time believing that that would have any significant impact on drivers' behavior. So I think they really would have to be significantly raised, or optically it really would have to be look like a significant narrowing, or perhaps potentially also the circles that you had shown to really get people to slow down there significantly.
Findest du nicht den Roundabout gut? Sag halt ein bisschen weiter. Müssen wir noch ein bisschen was sagen oder nicht?
Yeah. Constant, a quick follow-up question. Were there any of the measures that you saw you felt would have that impact or more impact than others?
Yeah, I would say the combination with the circle at Del Mar, that looked like it might have enough impact, yeah.
Okay.
Hi, this is Constance. I'm the wife, and I would like to echo what my husband just said. And to me, the roundabout or the circle would seem like the one measure that makes the most sense to me. And I agree with my husband, it really has to have a visual impact so that people don't just like speed along it and just ignore it. Because I think since the streets are so wide in the US, people could easily just like steer around them. So I think something that, either really narrow or really you have to change a little bit the direction so that you cannot just avoid it. But thank you very much for giving us these options and for having this discussion. And we are looking forward to a positive solution here. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, thank you both for the feedback.
Next is Nick, and then Bob Herbley. And Nick, you need to unmute yourself, and then we can hear you.
You can hear me.
Great, we can hear you now.
All right, thank you. Okay, I represent a home, one house in on 6 Del Mar. And I would like to discuss, I agree with Mr. Hall with respect to what he is concerned about with his home right there on the corner of the new pedestrian, what I call pedestrian trail. I walk and run that trail every single day. And I come from my house on Redwood, which is right off of West Street, near the Christian school there. And I would say that the biggest concern I have, again, is the traffic coming in and out right at the basically city limit line at that new pedestrian, what I believe is considered a new pedestrian / bicycle trail, which I use every single day. And the concern I have is the traffic, and I also drive in and out of that. That's my way in and out of town completely, is coming into town. the 30, to get it down, you have that 30 mile an hour speed limit sign, and then you have painted something also on the street itself at the city limit line. Isn't stopping most traffic, to get down to the 30 miles an hour before you hit the city limit line there at the pedestrian trail. It's just not happening. And I understand that Officer Ruiz is, they're working, and trying to tag speeders and so forth, but there is so much of the day that traffic continues to come in from southbound and even some on the outbound, causing pretty high speeds there. And I know Mr. Hall has put up, children at play signs. I've seen his, he's been concerned for a long time there on that corner house. I believe he's on the corner there on the west side. And I believe I'm very familiar with traffic calming and the approaches taken to slow traffic down and so forth. And I understand, the speed zone studies. I've done them many times myself, and and how they are needed to address speed limits along different roadways. But I'm more concerned with the pedestrian safety along this corridor. And especially now with the trail that crosses there, numerous people cross that road right there at that position every day using the trail. So my thoughts were that, working with the county, similar, I thought maybe the city could look at something like, and I believe Katie and you can, living in Davis, the 101A route into Davis to get to F Street off of 29. There's they've built a subdivision basically on the outskirts of Davis on Road 101A. And coming into town, they've used the similar approaches that you have identified for the El Dorado to basically Del Mar corridor. But coming in, is it possible to work with the county to work with some type of physical surface improvements prior to the city limit line in slowing the traffic down prior to hitting the city limit, the house and the pedestrian trail? Because I think that crossing there could use improvements today, but in order to do that, to slow traffic down, in order to have a good pedestrian crossing for use of the trail, would require the city and county coming to some kind of agreement to basically slow down the traffic some distance prior to that, using some of the physical amenities that have been identified in the traffic calming report you just presented. That would then address Mr. Hall's concern, because that is the biggest concern I have, is coming into town right there. They don't slow down too often right at the city limit now. They start to slow down when they get just past Del Mar, and they will have to slow down when they hit Del Mar, because you're identifying some improvements, bulb outs or medians right at the corner of Del Mar and West Street. But I think I like everything that you've presented. All of those are good improvements, and I do know that they work. I know that there's some that aren't maybe as familiar with them, but I have worked with them for the last 30 years. Oh, by the way, I'm an engineer as well, and have worked to get these types of improvements put in Woodland. And I've also been responsible for the design of a number of traffic calming pedestrian crossings throughout the city at the public schools. So I do believe they work, but I'm asking that the city go a little further, working with the county to see if we can, and it has nothing to do with speed zone studies, the entrance to the city, of maybe pushing it out a little further, the calming features to the south, in order to start slowing traffic down coming in, and that would also keep traffic down going out as well in front of, at that basic location just south of Del Mar. So that's my input. I do know that the one at 101A has some similar features that slow the traffic down, try to slow the traffic down anyway, before it hits the subdivisions that are adjacent to it to the west. But I would urge the city to go a little bit further with the traffic calming plan to see if we can't get the county to agree to, help or, allow improvements to the south of the city limit line. And it certainly would be a future improvement for the pedestrian crossing or pedestrian bicycle of the gravel trail that's there now. So that's all I have. I mean, at this point, and I do appreciate everything you folks have done. Katie, great job. And I'm glad to see this is finally coming to fruition, because every day it in my head, I see that. And I'm turning around looking at traffic speeding right at that point. I'm telling you, every day. And I do hit that location at least twice each day. And I certainly would like to see this as a priority project moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Okay, next is Bob and then Ted Hillier. Bob, you need to unmute yourself and then we will be able to hear you. Bob, I will, oh, there you
Can you hear me now?
Thank you.
Okay. First off, thank you for allowing this to happen. To echo what the previous man just said, I agree about the traffic coming in is really a big concern. I was wondering if they could maybe get like a flashing yellow light or something to warn people, just something visible. Beyond that, I absolutely love the idea of parking restrictions especially on the east side of West Street, because when we try to turn on Del Mar and go left or right, if there's cars there, it really makes it difficult. We have to nose out, and sometimes it's a little hairy. So the parking restrictions, especially on the east side, I think would be great. And finally, I guess stop signs are not possible, but then a really visible traffic circle would be my preference. I agree with Constance and Joachim that it really needs to be visible because these people come humming in from the country. So flashing yellow, maybe a nice visible traffic circle, and definitely parking restrictions on the east side for sure. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Bob. All right, looks like Ted is next.
Ted, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I live on Bella Casa and the corner of Bella Casa and Midway, but I'm over there almost every day. We use that, what he's talking about, that walking path, corridor, whatever, with my dog. And the time that we come out from Miramonte onto, the sidewalk on West and head that way, we see cars just flying by, and so I observed what looked like a camera on the corner of Del Mar, the southeast corner, at some point. Was that part of your traffic consultant's device or whatever? Do you know?
That was actually collecting pedestrian traffic using the crossing that we were just talking about for the gravel path. We're trying to determine how many people are currently using it so that we can use that as justification for grant funding to improve the corridor.
Good. Yeah, because it's more highly used every day. I see more and more people utilizing it, and particularly with this COVID thing going on where they're home and they want to get out. But I'm sure that some of the people along West Street that would lose parking in front of their homes will not be happy if the red goes in those areas. So Now, I understand that the, traffic control, police department has been out some. I have not observed them a lot. And something about the 55 citations written, I believe you could do that in a day if they had enough people out there. So, I don't have any answers. I'm just glad that you're doing something with this. I went out that way for 31 years, going to UCD every day. And, it's been this way for a long, long time. It isn't, anything new. It seems to be exacerbated, though, I think, with some of these newer high-powered cars that leave El Dorado and head out south. Anyway, thank you for your work, and give me a chance to have some input. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for participating, Ted. All right, looks like Marcia is next. You want to unmute yourself?
Thank you. Yes, my name is Marcia Letterman, and I live on the corner of West and West Miramonte. I've actually lived here for 45 years. I lived here before we had the stop sign, if you can believe it, at El Dorado. So if you can only imagine that before you could come in from town and you didn't have to stop till you got to Gibson Road. So definitely the stop sign at El Dorado has changed a lot. I was thinking from the beginning of this meeting, and I'm sorry I didn't write down the gentleman's name, but my thought kept going. It needs to, whatever you guys decide to do, needs to not be right there at El Dorado. It needs to be further away from the city limits a bit. And so I definitely, I think a couple gentlemen have mentioned that. And I totally think that that would be good to get. I like the flashing yellow light idea, but I like having something a little further out. And having lived here for all of this time on this corner, yeah, it seems to just increasingly get the speeding and the noise has just been increasing. For me, if there's an issue right here by my house on West Street, my house doesn't face West Street. So if there was parking that needed to be restricted, that would not be a problem for me. Obviously, the people would be most impacted that are south of me, that they're the few homes that do face West Street. I would hate for them to not be able to park right in front of their house, but I believe another gentleman said for that to be done on the other side of the street where there are no houses that face West Street. And I want to express my gratitude that this is happening. It's been, I don't even know how long, but it's been years since the stop sign, the stop sign there at El Dorado and West has been there for years and years. So it's definitely time to, I think, again, for me, the biggest thing, whatever it is that is decided, I would love for it to be out of town, out the city limits, so it's not happening right there where that poor gentleman that's been my neighbor for 40 plus years, you would think I would know him, but I don't. That the stopping process, the slowing, the calming starts further out than the city limit, which also might be helpful for people trying to cross there with the path that's going on. So anyway, thank you guys so much for your time and for doing this.
Certainly. Thank you, Marcia. And thanks for being an upstanding citizen for so long here in town. All right, Mr. Cole. Looks like you might still be muted.
Hello, can you hear me?
There we go. Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes, my name is Mr. Cole. I live at 2 Delmar Street. I've lived here all my life and lived in Woodland all my life. I've never seen these traffic problems as we are having here now. It's continuously getting worse all the time. I have seen several children get killed on this street right here. I won't mention any names. And this project is way, way, way overdue. I agree with a lot of people that spoke earlier. And the man that runs on the trail every day, I talk to him quite frequently. We have talked considerably about this problem, and it's getting worse and worse and worse all the time. It needs to be addressed as soon as possible. And putting all these other things in here, I agree with most of the people that have talked. They need to slow the traffic down prior to coming into the city limits. And not only that, I understand that the traffic is going to be coming from 102 around this way before too long. I've lived here all my life. This was one of the quietest streets in Woodland, California, and I've lived in Woodland, California all my life. So I do know how the traffic has speeded up. And the traffic at night is considerably terrible. It's just not in the daytime. It's all 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They race by here with these cars and these motorcycles, and it's gotten way out of hand. And they need to slow the traffic down. I'm going to say it again and again and again prior to coming into town. You got to do that. That's all there is to it. There isn't no ifs, ands, buts about it. It has to be done immediately, as soon as possible, before there's another death that happens. And I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me. I'm not a complainer. I just don't want to see somebody else get hurt or get killed. So I thank you for your time and your consideration, and I would appreciate you looking into it and trying to work with the county as well. And the county has to do something as well as the city. And I think it can happen, and it can happen quickly. And I thank you for your time and your consideration, and I'll be happy when it gets done. And it has to be done as soon as possible. And you have to slow the traffic down, not 2 blocks coming into the city limits. You have to slow the traffic down way out in the country prior to coming into the city limits. And the county has to work with you to do this. And I know you guys can do it and appropriate the money to do it. I know we have it, so that's no excuse. You have to get on it before somebody gets hurt. Please. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. All right, Ms. Snyder.
You.
There we go.
Hey, this is Joe Snyder. I live on Miramonte here with my wife, Stephanie. I think everyone's having really good ideas. I think slowing down traffic before we hit town is vital, but I think there's definitely multiple things needed, not just one answer. I like the idea of putting a roundabout in before we hit Woodland. I don't know as far as land acquisition goes, but I see it all over the place now. Like Rio Vista has that going on, K-Pay. It's becoming more and more common on county roads. I think that'd be a good idea. If not, I like the idea of a roundabout at Del Mar, in addition to a crosswalk with bright green or yellow LED lighting, like a button you'd push when you're crossing to that trail, and then also having 30 miles an hour pushed back south another quarter mile or so. There has to be multiple multiple things to slow it down before we hit that roundabout. Because I mean, I'm thinking 38 might be the average, but you're seeing people fly by at 55. So if you have someone who doesn't know it's there, who's used to flying down, they might hit that roundabout. So
Especially
slowing them
at
down
night.
ahead of time is going to be vital.
Another concern we have, sorry, this is Stephanie. We're on the same call, obviously, because we live together. Another issue, in addition to having the speed not reduced in the county, like so many of our neighbors have suggested, and hitting that roundabout at such a high speed, I'm concerned at night someone's going to hit that roundabout if it's installed. Oh, can you get her, please? Another issue that we're concerned about is any traffic possibly being diverted onto our streets on Del Mar, Miramonte, Hacienda. I think the curbs, while I don't really like the idea of having a curb on the corner, I do like the fact that it could potentially reduce the speed of some people who come onto our streets to get to further streets, so they don't have to go down El Dorado or hit the stop signs or what have you. So I'm not sure how other people feel about having those curbs installed in addition, but we do want to make sure that the traffic diverted onto our streets is slowed down, but not hindering our ability to get onto West Street as well. And I know that's a tall order, but it would be nice. And I don't know if Joe has anything else to add. I think that's all we have to say. So thank you for this.
Great. Yeah, thank you both, Joe and Stephanie. Appreciate the feedback. All right. Looks like Robert Blakesley's next.
Hello?
Hello.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. This is Linda Blakesley, and I'm here with Robert Blakesley. We live right at 1744 West, which Del Mar would, if you keep going straight on Del Mar, you would run into our house. We like the idea the ideas that have been presented. Our preference would be to have speed bumps south of the city limit, or the city, where the county comes together, because we agree that slowing down the traffic coming in from the south is really important, because people just, we see people flying by all the time, and we don't particularly like the idea of a roundabout in front of our house. And we think that the speed bumps, say 3 speed bumps, in a row, would really slow people down coming into the city. And that's all we really, Bob, do you have anything you want to say?
No, I think speed bumps with signage advising that they are coming up would really slow them down as they enter the city.
So anyway, that's our 2 cents, and we appreciate your work on this. Thank you.
Great. No, thank you for participating. Okay, Laura Reynolds.
You there?
Yes, we can hear you.
So this is Cody Reynolds. I'm Laura's husband. We live on Miramonte Court. We happen to back up to the walking path. And, whether it be at nighttime or in the morning, the time really has no precedence. Kind of in conjunction with the speed that people carry down West Street, especially once they leave city limits. But, along with like a light up sign possibly, and some type of protection for pedestrians crossing the pathway there going across West Street, I personally agree with the last speaker. It's been my thought in between El Dorado and Miramonte to have a speed table, and then as well to have one once you cross out of the city line into the county line. I think it's something very feasible, rather cheap, and honestly, I see that being a very good option for everybody involved in this area and in this community. Whether we get rid of the parking zone on the east side or not, I think that this is something that should happen, because day in, day out, all night long, all morning long, nobody ever lets off the gas, it seems like. And for people that have younger children, such as ourselves, that's a concern. We would like to be able to go out and, let our kids ride their bikes on that walking path. And obviously, I'm not saying unattended, but there's just so many reckless people that drive down that road. It's very hard for us to relax enough to let our kids enjoy that. And I want to thank you guys for having this call, and we appreciate it.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Cody. Great feedback. Okay. It looks like we're down to one more. 1748 West and 2 Hacienda.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, we can hear you.
Okay, this is Kathy Edgington. My husband Richard and I, we live at 2 Hacienda Lane. We've lived here for 36 years. Our front door faces Hacienda, but we're on the corner of West and Hacienda. And we're outside a lot most of the day, and the traffic speeds by at all hours of the day and night. And I wouldn't mind having, something put up here at the corner of West and Hacienda. But my sister-in-law, Hazel Barlow, is here with us. She lives at 1748 West Street, which is right if you're going down Del Mar, you're gonna hit her property. If you put any kind of median or roundabout there, I don't believe she's going to be able to get out of her driveway. And she's here with us now. She's lived there for 48 years. And also in one of the drawings, you had all the red there. I think it would take all the parking away from in front of her house also.
And I don't think it's going to slow anybody down.
Yeah, we really don't think that a roundabout or any kind of median there at Del Mar is going to slow anybody down. I think everybody's suggesting that doing it, past the city limits, slowing them down before they get into town, or
Crosswalk.
Out of town.
Yeah.
Yeah, something. And I will say that from just observing the traffic, most of these people that speed up and down here are the same people. And so I think lights or anything visual, they already know the path, they just speed along here. So anyway, that's our 2 cents. Unless Hazel, do you want to?
No.
I think that's it for us. Thank you very much.
Great. Yes. Thank you both. All right. Good. Looks like we have a few more. Helen.
Hi. Sorry, I'm a little late too. I had some technical difficulties. In this day and age of all these Zoom meetings, you'd think it'd get easier, but it doesn't. I'm the one that sent out the flyer. I'm the one that kind of started getting everybody at least talking as a group. And I know Ken and Katie, we've talked, and I do not believe in any way, shape, or form that speed limit signs, blinking lights are going to do anything, because they already know the speed limit. These people that are using that as a freeway are our neighbors, our community members of this town. They know the speed limits in this town. They know what they should be doing, and they're not doing it. The other aspect is, and I don't know, and I apologize, Katie, I didn't see your slides, but the whole thing really got rolling when I brought up to the city council a couple of years ago, and I know Katie and I talked about it. This is one of the only entrances into Woodland, or exits, where the drivers are not required to change how they're driving. In other words, they don't have to make a turn, they don't have to merge or do anything. So that has to be taken into account for things. And so the idea of the circle, which I think is one of the best things for it, is it's going to force them to do something to say, whoa, something's happening here, where speed limits and lights and all that don't do that. And So, but I do believe it needs to be somewhere besides a dead-end intersection where it's going to hamper, or I feel like it's going to affect the property values of especially the two homes. Now I know her name is Barlow, and I'm sorry, I forget the one next door where this circle would be. I think it's going to reduce their property values. And so I am huge that we need to get it outside of town. And I don't know what the general plan looks like out there to what that future is going to be. But I know, Katie, you and I have talked about how that walking trail, hopefully some trees will get planted. Hopefully, you know, this is down the road, I realize, but if we could incorporate some of this in this to, it has to visually, and it has to force the driver into a different mode than gas pedal, brake pedal, and straight ahead. So that to me is the paramount thing, is to somehow get them to have to, and that's why I love the circle. And I know someone brought up over on Road 101 going into Davis. I'm going to go drive it tomorrow and see what that looks like. But I had to go back and forth to Sacramento to the cancer center over on C Street. And through that, let's see, it'd be the north end of Sacramento there where the police station and all that, those buildings are. There is traffic calming all the way from West Sacramento to C Street. And there's circles and there's all that put in there, and no speed bumps. It's all circles and actually diverting traffic by making them turn onto another street. And it's amazing how the traffic is calm. It's all in orderly fashion. No one's fighting it. The citizens in Sacramento seem to be driving along with it just fine. I think it's going to be a shock to the drivers who use West Street when it first happens. But I just appreciate people getting on the call and expressing their opinions. So it's not just me always yapping. But I really truly believe that the circle outside of town, or you know, something, we can't devalue people's property to do this traffic calming. And I think the circle would do that too, especially those two homes. That's all I had to say.
Great. Thank you, Helen. And again, thank you for all your efforts to continue to push the city to address the issue. You've been patiently relentless. So we do appreciate that. Okay. I see a Rogers.
Yep, that's me. Hi, I'm
Hi.
Nicole Rogers.
Hey, Nicole.
Hey, how the heck are you?
Doing great.
Thank you so much for holding this. I'm really grateful to all of you. I apologize. I missed some of the earlier part of the meeting. I had another that ran long, so I apologize if my question is a bit redundant. I'm curious as to where the city ends and the county begins. And as I am a resident on Del Mar, and my husband and I and our dog, we probably walk the neighborhoods and are along the like farm greenbelt area, which I'm always a little unsure if that is private or public. But I, as somebody who crosses west from Del Mar just about every day as a pedestrian, I absolutely am like acutely aware of the speed of other drivers, and I feel very self-righteous in my car when I'm slowing down, turning into my neighborhood. So I think I agree with what Helen was saying previously, that there's likely to be something more significant that forces a shift in a driver's behavior sooner than receiving just a flashing light or something right at Del Mar and West. So I'm curious if someone might be able to answer for me. If we are talking about having some sort of traffic slowing mechanism placed on West, how far south on West do we travel before, like, that we would have control over as the city before it becomes county?
So the county line and the city line are right there effectively at the back of the fence line. So our jurisdiction stops effectively right when you hit that trail, and it becomes county jurisdiction.
Oh, got it. Thank you.
Mhm.
And so your proposal is to, or you're just taking comment now, or are you, or is there a current proposal?
Well, yeah, Katie, if you wouldn't mind rolling back through. So we engaged a third-party traffic engineer to help evaluate.
Yes, I remember seeing this.
Corridor, yeah. So we have 3 different options there. Again, they're just a starting point for this discussion. We've received great feedback today on how you guys experience the corridor as
Got it.
residents, and have heard very loud and clear, right, that it's great to address the segment within the city limits. And that will only be as effective as addressing the cars as they approach the city limits from the county. And we are absolutely going to pursue those conversations with the county and see how far we can get in terms of integrating city limit measures. We know we have control over what we can do within the city limits, and would very much welcome any feedback you might have on kind of 3 different options or other options that you would envision for these 3 intersections here inside the city limit.
Well, looking at each of these 3, or as you scroll through them, these options, I mean, I think my voice is probably in chorus with others, in that the limitations that we have within the city space may be too little too late, if you understand what I mean in terms of the duration and the speed buildup of traffic coming in. And, you know, as Helen had mentioned too, that, you know, this isn't, you know, an entire army of outsiders cruising through at 65 miles an hour. You know, it's us. These are our neighbors. This is our community. And so it's a consciousness and a kind of an overall awareness that has to change some. And so I think if something were to be a physical behavior change happening only within the city limits, we may end up feeling disappointed. Whereas I think, as you mentioned before, Ken, that having that kind of relationship with the county, I think any one of those 3 options in tandem with something with the county would make good sense. But I wonder too, like if there is something else that can be done to just, and I don't know, and this is very pipe dream, but I do think that there needs to be a bit of, I don't know, a sense of responsibility or commitment or awareness that we have. Because I don't know how many people are on this call, but you know, everyone that's here cares about this experience very much and the safety very much. And how can we spread that? Because, you know, it's not as though we have this army of strangers coming down west. This is the people who all live here.
Mm-hmm.
Nonetheless, thank you for answering my question. And I'm really happy to be on this call with my neighbors, and I hope you all are doing well.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Nicole. Appreciate your comments and feedback, and couldn't agree more, right? That this is our community, that we need to figure out how to change their mindset on, you know, this corridor that they've traveled for so many years. It is a residential street, and how can you change that perception and awareness of this corridor as being a neighborhood? So there is no one solution, right, that's going to achieve that. And as we pointed out, we recognize there's pros and cons to each one of these, and there's potential conflicts that we're going to have to work through with, you know, the immediately adjacent property owners. Loss of parking, loss of access, you know, absolutely is a valid concern and a constraint that we're going to have to work through to find the right solution. So it looks like Johnny raised his hand again, and I want to give Johnny another chance to provide some comments. Johnny, looks like you're still muted. Right, Johnny, I don't know if you can hear me, but looks like you're muted, and if you have a comment, maybe we can come back to you.
There you go. I got it. I found the unmute button there.
Cool. All right.
So just in the time that we've been having this meeting here, I've almost been run over twice. Someone actually pulled over down the road a little bit and then drove off. So this is ridiculous. I do have one comment about the median, the way that the speed is rated around here by the 88th percentile. That's the whole reason we're having this meeting, is because 88% of the people, or 95% of the people actually, fly through here going too fast. That's the problem. Why do they judge the speed limit on the problem? It's ridiculous. But I agree with Kenny across the street here that something's going to have to be done soon, because the people aren't going to stop walking and using this bicycle trail to walk their dogs, and someone's going to get splattered again, and I don't want to have to clean that up. So again, I agree with everybody. I do appreciate the chance to talk about this and get my input in there, because you know, I see it every day. I'm out of everybody. I think I would get the worst of it. But yes, let's keep me in the loop and let's see what we can do about this. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Johnny. And yeah, appreciate everybody's comments, some great feedback. Absolutely, all of it has been heard. And Katie, maybe if it's fair to ask you to summarize what your advice would be on next steps, given this feedback.
Sure. I have been feverishly scribbling down notes as everybody's been talking, and even without having done that, I can tell you that what I'm hearing is very much akin to what we heard from the traffic consultant, which was we need to do something near Del Mar, near the city limit. We need to get people to slow down as they're coming into the city or before they're coming to the city, ideally before, and we will definitely explore that with the county and see what we can do to coordinate with them to try to address the issue before you get into the city. The traffic consultant had said the same thing, that the reason he had recommended something at Del Mar was for that exact reason, to try to get people to change their behavior as they come into town. And that is very much the overarching concern that I'm hearing from everybody. I think that that while we do need to make sure that we address that issue, I also don't want to lose sight of what happens north of the city limits. If we simply address something out, say we put a median or a circle or whatever it might be down at the south end of the corridor, how does that affect drivers north of there? We need to make sure that we don't lose sight of that as well. I think that listening to what everybody has been saying, I'm going to move my slide here, kind of our next steps are taking what we've heard. I may need to directly reach out to some of you that have been on this call to speak about what the different changes to the roadway might mean to your access to the no parking. Like I said, the sketches that I put up on the screen are very rough. They're not by any means even scaled. They're an example of what things might look like. So the no parking zones that were identified as red on my drawings may have no representation in the real world. But once we get into a point where we can start laying this out on paper for real and looking at what the impacts may be and where these improvements may go, how they affect certain property owners different than others, those are conversations that we're going to need to have. And so with that information and moving forward with that in mind, I would say that that we need to, next steps will be that we will reach out to the county to explore what their tolerance is for us doing something within the county limits and adjacent to their limits at the corridor. We will review that plan with our internal staff to go through with public safety and ensure that we aren't doing anything detrimental to our own ability to serve our community. And then with the affected property owners, like I said, there'll be final outreach with them. Once we have a plan that we feel can be supported, is going to be effective, we will send that out to the neighborhood for neighborhood review and approval. And ideally, if we can get some level of a review completed and approved before in the April-May timeframe, we can get something designed and built this summer. I think that schedule gets a bit challenging as we reach out to the county to determine what can be built within the county and within the city. As you mentioned, Ken, we control the right-of-way within the city, so that's simple for us. The coordination between us and the county might make things a little more challenging, but I feel like we can definitely move forward with something and get things done in the summer timeframe. And so I'm going to put on the screen, for those of you that are logged in, my contact information. You should have this. It's the same as what was on the notice that went out to the residents, but just for a reminder, if anybody has any questions, anything you maybe forgot to say tonight or didn't think of until tomorrow morning or whatnot, please reach out to me. Let me know what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you feel.
Great. All right, thank you, Katie. So I'll just wrap up and say one more time, thank you all for taking the time out and sharing your deep concerns and valid concerns about the corridor safety here. And we on the city side are committed to find the right solution to address this problem as quickly as we possibly can. So want to thank you again, and on behalf of the City Council, certainly acknowledge the issues you guys have out there, and we're here to help you try to address them. So thank you again, and please don't hesitate to reach out to Katie and send her any additional thoughts, or have your neighbors send comments to her as well. All right, well, with that, why don't we conclude, and thank you all, and look forward to getting your feedback as we move through to a final design. All right, good night.